Hello friends, welcome to Political Science and International Relations. In this lecture, we are going to study a very important Western scholar in political science, Antonio Gramsci. Antonio Gramsci is from Italy. He is a Marxist. More specifically, he is a neo-Marxist. He is considered one of the greatest Western Marxists. We study Antonio Gramsci today because he gave new insights in political science. He borrowed from Marxism, but he gave his practical insights. He talked about the term called hegemony, under which he gave an insight on how a revolution can take place in society. We will study about hegemony later in this lecture. The term hegemony was earlier discussed by the leader of the Soviet Union, Lenin, but it was Gramsci who gave an elaborate explanation of the concept hegemony. Gramsci was born in 1891 in Sardinia, Italy. He died at a young age. He died in 1937 in Rome. Initially, Gramsci was a member of the Socialist Party of Italy, PSI. He later founded the Communist Party of Italy and worked under the Communist Party along with others. He also worked with the Communist International, the Third International. Gramsci is a neo-Marxist, as already mentioned. Neo-Marxists are people who borrow from Karl Marx. They accept Karl Marx, they accept the foundation of Marxism, but they don't accept orthodox Marxism directly. They go for a modification of Marxism. They also borrow from other schools of thought. Karl Marx saw society through a class perspective. According to Marx, the two important classes in society are bourgeoisie and the proletariat. According to Marx, class is characterized by a group of people who are similarly related to ownership of the means of production. Means of production is nothing but the factors of production: land, labor, investment, capital. These come under means of production. People who are owners of the means of production are referred to as bourgeoisie by Marx. The workers are referred to as proletariat. According to Marx, bourgeois is the dominant class, proletariat is the oppressed class. This is how he saw society. According to Karl Marx, bourgeois is a ruling class in the form of society called capitalism. Capitalism will later transform into socialism and ultimately it will transform into communism. According to Marx, everything is economically determined. That is why Marx is seen as an economic determinist. We see Marx as an economic determinist. If you ask Marx to study the ancient Indian society which had the institution called caste system, Marx will look at the caste system once again through economic determinism only. He will look at the higher varnas and higher caste as bourgeois. He will call the lower caste and the lower varnas as the proletariat. So he determined society economically. But the neo-Marxists don't accept economic determinism alone. They are also influenced by others. They are influenced by Max Weber, German sociologist. Max Weber spoke about status, he spoke about power. So Weber also influences neo-Marxist. Neo-Marxism itself comes under the broader school of thought called New Left. New Left addresses many issues like human rights, feminism, gay rights, and so on. So it is a concept under the larger project called New Left. Neo-Marxism is associated with critical theory. The critical theory itself is associated with Frankfurt School. Critical theory, Frankfurt School, gives importance to culture and society. Please ensure to take all these points as notes. The critical society is taking the culture and the society into account. It also takes the ideology into account. I already mentioned that Marx will look at the Indian caste system through economic determinism, but the neo-Marxists will look at the Indian caste system through culture and the society. They also take into account ideology. The important scholars under the critical theory and Frankfurt School are Herbert Marcuse and Jürgen Habermas, among others. Antonio Gramsci contributed to this school. So he is a contributor to neo-Marxism, we can say. Right, now coming back to Antonio Gramsci. Antonio Gramsci is very special. He gives more importance to practicality. His theory itself is based on the concept called praxis. What is praxis? Theory applied into practice is called praxis. The concept praxis can be dated back to the ancient Greek philosophy, the times of Aristotle. Aristotle also gave importance to praxis. You can see the essence of Aristotle in Marxism. Marxism also focuses on praxis. Aristotle also focused on praxis earlier. Now, Gramsci, a neo-Marxist, also focuses on praxis. We will see how he puts forward his theory of praxis. So we will study this in Hegemony later. Antonio Gramsci gave importance to the workers. He wanted social transformation to happen through the workers. Now Karl Marx also wanted the transformation to happen through the workers. But Karl Marx prescribed a revolution. He wanted the workers to go for a revolution. He wanted the bourgeois class to be taken down and a socialist state to be achieved. So Marx was going for a revolution, but Gramsci was not going for a direct revolution. Gramsci's ideas and Vladimir Lenin's ideas, you can find similarity. Lenin was the leader of the Soviet Union. Lenin also used the term hegemony. Later, Gramsci used the term hegemony, but Gramsci gave an elaborate explanation of the concept of hegemony. If you compare the Soviet Union with the states of Europe, the Soviet Union, at the time it was the Tsarist Russia, it was industrially backward. It did not have a advanced capitalism. It did not have a strong bourgeois. According to Marx, the socialist transformation can happen only if there is an existing capitalist society. Right? So there should be capitalism, there should be presence of bourgeois. Only in such a situation a revolution can happen. Revolution leads to socialism. Finally, it leads to communism. But in case of Russia, the country was economically backward. Agriculture itself was semi-feudal in nature. Industries were not fully developed. The bourgeois was not strong. In such a case, Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks, who later became the leader of the Soviet Union, he put forward a unique concept for social transformation or revolution in Russia. He wanted the workers to initiate the revolution, but along with the peasantry. Now the same is prescribed by Antonio Gramsci. He wanted the workers of Italy to join hands with the peasantry. Now Italy's economic condition was also similar to Tsarist Russia. Compared to other European states, Italy was economically backward. So he was also prescribing a formula where the workers had to join hands with the peasantry and go for a social revolution. So you can find similarities between Lenin and Gramsci. It is to be noted that Gramsci was influenced by the Italian idealist Benedetto Croce. Italian idealist. Gramsci was later jailed by the oppressive regime in Italy. He spent years in jail. During his time in prison, he wrote 34 notebooks, which are famously called the prison notebooks. The prison notebooks are a valuable source for politics. You are able to gain new insights from these works, prison notebooks. Right. Now, before studying hegemony, we will first have a look into the view of Gramsci regarding political science and politics. Gramsci was opposed to studying political science on the lines of natural sciences. He was opposed to positivism. What is positivism? The study of natural sciences on the lines of social sciences on the lines of natural sciences is called positivism. Positivism was thriving in the late 18th century and the early 19th century. Scientific study of social sciences on the lines of natural sciences like physics, biology, and so on. It was positivism which contributed to the emergence of sociology as a discipline in the 19th century. But Gramsci is opposed to positivism. He tells that it is wrong to study political science and politics as natural science. The rise of sociology is related to decline of the concept of political science, which took place in the 19th century according to Gramsci. So Gramsci wanted to study politics practically. According to Gramsci, man does not react. According to him, man lives in a society. Man cannot be conceived of except as historically determined man. So he calls as historically determined man. You can study man only from a social context. Right? In fact, he calls science itself as a political activity. So he had a radical view of science itself. While the positivists wanted social sciences to be studied on the lines of natural sciences, Gramsci was calling science as a political activity. The purpose of science itself was the gaining of knowledge. Now let's discuss the role which Gramsci envisaged for the working class. This is very important. He sees praxis as social transformation. What is praxis? Theory put into practice is called praxis. Antonio Gramsci gives importance to the factory councils in Italy. He tells that the labor unions in Italy, the trade unions, their role is not enough. He wants to give importance to the workers through the factory councils. Now, factory councils are able to take power in their hands. Factory council is seen as the agent of social transformation and change by Gramsci. Vladimir Lenin of USSR saw the vanguard party as the agent of change. The vanguard party was a Bolshevik party. Machiavelli, the modern father of political science, he wanted the prince to wield power. Similarly, Gramsci wanted the factory councils to be the agent of change. According to Gramsci, social transformation can come only through leadership and a political organization or a party. Without leadership and political organization, we cannot go for social transformation. This transformation is seen as the war of position by Gramsci. We will study war of position in detail later. War of position is contrasted with the war of maneuver. War of maneuver is the direct confrontation of a class in a society for social change. This is called war of maneuver. War of position is not the direct confrontation. It is the step-by-step process through which a class attains social change. Gramsci argues for war of position rather than war of maneuver. Gramsci referred to the group called Jacobins, who played a major role during the French Revolution. The Jacobins gave leadership. They were a political organization. They were egalitarians. They wanted change. At the same time, they took up violence as a tool. Nevertheless, the Jacobins gave leadership. They were a political organization. They can be compared to the party. Likewise, Gramsci wanted the factory councils in Italy to take up the leadership. The Turin factory councils in Italy were seen as the agent of change by Gramsci. We will now study the concept of hegemony. The concept of hegemony is very important as far as Gramsci's philosophy is concerned. Before studying hegemony, we will study the concept put forward by Gramsci called intellectuals and organic intellectuals. Right. What is intellectuals? Intellectuals, they are the people present in a society who organize a web of beliefs, institutional and social relations. Right? They actually contribute to hegemony. So intellectuals are the people who are contributing to hegemony. They construct the web of beliefs, social relations, and institutions. As a result, hegemony is created. Let me explain with a simple example. Let's take the political party in India, BJP, the ruling party. You will find intellectuals in the BJP. Now, who are the intellectuals? They organize hegemony, which is nothing but the web of belief, institutional and social relations. Now, BJP will have intellectuals. It is associated with another organization, RSS. Now, these people, they will construct a web of belief. For example, BJP construct web of beliefs which includes cultural nationalism, Hindutva, Ram Rajya. The concept of Hindutva and Ram Rajya may include other communities, Christians, Muslims, and so on, but nevertheless, they organize a web of beliefs. They also organize the institutional and social relations. There are many institutions in society, example, family, church in the Western context, and temples in the Indian context. There is civil society, which is another institution. The intellectuals will also organize the institutions and the relationship between people. So BJP and the organizations associated with BJP like RSS will have such intellectuals. Take the Dravidian parties, they will also have intellectuals. We will take the Dravidian parties and the associated organization. In South India, you have the Dravidian dispensation, parties DMK, ADMK, and other Dravidian parties. You have the Dravidar Kazhagam, which is the equivalent of RSS for the right wing. Dravidar Kazhagam provides the ideological base. Now they also organize the web of belief. When BJP and RSS talk about Lord Ram, the Dravidian dispensation will talk about Ravan. According to them, Ravan is a revolutionary. Ravan stands for liberation according to the Dravidian dispensation. So they have their own belief. They are against the Vedic cultural beliefs and practices. They are against the caste system. Many of them support atheism. So this is the intellects on the Dravidian dispensation. So any major dominant class in a society will have its set of intellectuals. According to Gramsci, all human beings have rational intellectual capacities, but only some have an intellectual function in society. What do you understand? All of us have intellectual capacities, but only few play a role in society using the intellectual capacities. I hope you understood the concept of intellectuals. Within intellectuals, there are two types of intellectuals. One is organic intellectuals and the other is traditional intellectuals. When we talk about intellectuals, anybody can be an intellectual. But generally, these sections are seen as intellectuals. Priests, teachers, artists, they mainly come under intellectuals. Okay, organic intellectuals. These people are mainly responsible for hegemony. They are also responsible for the reconstruction of hegemony. The organic intellectuals are the new progressive class which tries to organize a new social order. So organic intellectuals are progressive, they are going for change. Traditional intellectuals, they are close to tradition, they want to go back to a earlier historical period. This is the difference between organic intellectuals and traditional intellectuals. Now we will discuss about the concept of hegemony. Gramsci divides the state into two. He divides the state into two realms. One is civil society and the other is political society. Civil society is associated with hegemony or consent. Political society is associated with force or coercion. This is how Gramsci divides the state, political and civil. Now hegemony is coming under the civil society. Coercion or force is coming under the political society. But the civil society and political society always balance each other. They reinforce each other. The state itself balances between the political society and the civil society. If you take the example of the ruling party in India, BJP, the government established by the BJP at the center and in many states, the governmental apparatus, which includes the army, police, and other law enforcement agencies, they wield force. They come under political society. Similarly, hegemony is seen in the civil society. The ideas and values put forward by the political party and its partners like RSS, it is here, civil society. The same applies for the Dravidian parties. Army, police, apparatus for enforcing law and order are here, political society. The values put forward by the Dravidian dispensation is here, in the civil society. So you understand that any dominant class cannot wield power only through force. It needs an alternative strength, which is nothing but hegemony. Hegemony is nothing but building opinion and creating legitimacy. You have to create legitimacy for yourself. The people in the state have to accept you. Only then you can wield power. Only such a class will stay dominant for a long time. Right. Now, how is this hegemony established? Gramsci explains this elaborately. He first explains how the capitalist class, the bourgeois, establishes its hegemony. Then he tells how the revolutionary class, that is working class, can reorganize the hegemony and take the power from the bourgeois class. This process is nothing but the war of position. Through the war of position, the hegemony first created by the dominant class, bourgeois class or the capitalist class, can be reorganized. A new hegemony can be created by the working class. The process is the war of position. We will first discuss the first hegemony, the hegemony built by the bourgeois class or the capitalist class. In order for a class to exert its will and establish its dominance, it first have to overcome its narrow corporate interest. Narrow corporate interest should be overcome. It should overcome its economic interest. Right? Only then it can establish its dominance. So first to overcome your economic interest. then you have to exert a moral and intellectual leadership. You have to give leadership morally and intellectually. The British did the same in India. They tried to give moral leadership and intellectual leadership. Many of us Indians did not accept it. That is a separate matter of discussion. But the British were able to successfully rule India for such a long period because, apart from their economic interests, they gave moral and intellectual leadership. Then the dominant class should be able to make compromises within certain limits with a variety of allies. The dominant class is giving the moral and intellectual leadership. It has to compromise and it has to take along with it other classes. These are the other classes. The dominant class should give leadership to other classes. It should convince other classes that the dominant class is trying to satisfy the interest of the other classes by giving the leadership. Only then all the classes in the society will accept the leadership of the dominant class. Now a social organization is formed. This is referred to as historical bloc by Gramsci. This is the historical bloc. Historical bloc is the basis for consent. Now you are able to establish the consent because you are able to take other people along with you. You are giving leadership. You are compromised on some areas. So this is the basis of consent. For example, RSS concept of Ram Rajya also includes Christians, Muslims and other communities. Now what is this? Nothing but historical bloc. The dominant class takes along with it other classes and convinces them and forms the historical bloc, which is the basis of the consent. Now who plays the role? The intellectuals, they play the role as already discussed. They organize the web of belief, they create the institutions, they organize the social relations, and as a result a consent is created. Many Muslims voted for BJP, many Christians voted for BJP because a historical bloc was formed. Earlier the Congress formed a historical bloc in India. Now the BJP is able to successfully form a historical bloc. Tomorrow another political party may be able to form a historical bloc. In case of South India, the Dravidian dispensation successfully created a historical bloc in the past. The Dravidian dispensation, the dominant class were the OBCs. Dominant class. OBCs were the ones giving leadership as far as the Dravidian hegemony was concerned. They took alongside other classes like Dalits, women, Muslims and so on. They convinced other classes that the OBC class, that is the leadership, was standing for the interest of the other classes as well. Now this is how the bourgeoisie creates the hegemony. These examples I have explained in the Indian context, but in the Western context, the bourgeois is the dominant class. It creates the historical bloc. Now the economic system is also consolidated. Gramsci calls this as organized capitalism. The process involved is called passive revolution by Gramsci. Passive revolution is actually spearheaded by the bourgeois themselves. The dominant class or ruling class itself goes for the passive revolution. Under passive revolution, you don't see conflict between classes. The questions are settled quite peacefully so that there is no need for any real revolution. If you look at the unification of Italy in 1861, It is also a form of passive revolution. The Italian state itself played a major role. The classes did not go for conflict with each other, but the state replaced the class. So there was no need for a revolution. So the questions are settled, the grievances are resolved, a state was able to be established easily. Now, the historical block has been set, hegemony has been established, but the work is not over. The dominant class, if it wants to be successful, it also has to go for some compromises and reforms to satisfy all the classes within the historical block. Reforms or compromises. What is the reason? Only if the dominant class giving leadership to the historical bloc goes for compromises or reforms, the interest of all the other classes can be satisfied. Here is the leader, is giving leadership to the other classes, he has to compromise. Only then the interest of the other classes can also be satisfied. Take the example of the 3 form laws which are brought as ordinances and later repealed. The government, the dominant class, in which the intellectuals are present, they actually went for a compromise. They were ready to do a compromise because they felt that the compromise can satisfy the interest of the other classes. Now the dominant class is able to wield power continuously. So be ready for reforms or compromises. The former Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, he made some compromises to appease a particular religious community. Not just Rajiv Gandhi, many governments in India have done so. So the dominant class has to go for reforms or compromises. The full democratic control develops in the highest form of hegemony. So when the hegemony is very strong in the form of a historical bloc, you see full democratic control. You can take the examples of strong leaders who ruled India for many years. You can find full democratic control in the peak of the hegemony because they will be ready to go for compromises and reforms. They will satisfy the interest of other groups whom they are taking along. So it is nothing but a full democratic control. At the same time, this hegemony cannot be reduced to just false consciousness or manipulation of the masses. You cannot just cheat the masses through manipulation, because the masses, the people, they have their own common sense on the worldview, which is made up of a variety of elements. The people in the country, they will think, they are capable of logical analysis. So their worldview is composed of many elements, some of which can be contradicting the dominant ideology also. But the dominant class should overcome this challenge. It should be able to provide a more coherent and systematic worldview. Let me explain this with an example. The regime of Nazi Germany under Hitler, it also had a historical bloc in which it had hegemony. Majority of the people in Germany supported the rule of Hitler during the peak of the Nazi regime. Now, the ruling class, the Nazi party, it was giving a coherent and systematic worldview. It need not be an absolute coherent and systematic worldview, but the masses, the people, they should be convinced. They should not think that their view of the world is in contradiction with the view of the dominant ideology. Adolf Hitler talked about the concept New Order. New Order was associated with the Germanic race. He called the Germanic race as the Aryan race. Aryan race was held superior. This was seen as the most superior human race. by Hitler. At the same time, he made some compromises. He told that Nazi Germany can accept people from other regions, especially from the higher latitudes, within the Aryan race or the New Order. So he also made some compromises. Only then the people will legitimize the government. The leadership of the Soviet Union, it also convinced the various ethnicities which were seen in the form of republics. 15 republics were present under the USSR. The USSR provided a coherent and systematic worldview which satisfied the different communities living. But ultimately, the historical bloc broke away in 1991. The Soviet Union itself broke up. There are many reasons for this. However, we can find out that the historical bloc, as long as it can be maintained, the ruling class will maintain the dominance. If you are unable to maintain the historical bloc, if you are unable to maintain the hegemony, you will lose power. The USSR lost its hegemony, the historical bloc was lost, the USSR itself broke up in the year 1991. Okay friends, we now discuss how the hegemony was established by the dominant class or the bourgeois in the first place. We will now discuss how the working class can take the power from the hands of the bourgeois. This is achieved through the process called subversion of hegemony. It is also referred to as a reorganization of hegemony. Now, who is going to initiate this? It is the working class. Gramsci wants the working class. He wanted the working class to work with the peasantry, and he wants a social transformation to take place. Now, this transformation is the war of position. War of position is the social transformation which happens in steps. It is not a direct violent revolution. It is a step-by-step process. It slowly builds the strength of the social foundations of the new state. Now, hegemony, which you already studied, is based on the social foundation. Am I right? So, war of position is slowly building on the social foundation. Now, this social foundation itself is based on culture. Gramsci tells that culture is how class is lived. So the cultural context is very important. The hegemony created by the organic intellectuals. You see this hegemony based on culture. So the working class has to give importance to the culture. It has to go for war of position rather than a war of maneuver or a frontal attack. It has to slowly build up the strength of the social foundations of the new state. Now it will be able to go for subversion of the hegemony and reorganization of the hegemony. Let's see how this happens. The hegemony already built by the dominant class in the form of historical bloc is present. Am I right? Now this hegemony simply has to be reorganized. It has to be subverted. Reorganization of hegemony. This is done by the working class. The process is called war of position. Am I right? This is achieved through the foundation of society, that is social foundation. Now, the working class should simply do what the bourgeois class already did. The bourgeois class through its organic intellectuals set up the hegemony. Now this hegemony has to be simply changed. So the working class, guided by a party and its own intellectuals, should now build its own hegemony. It has to create its set of beliefs, it has to create institutions, it has to create an intellectual climate, and it has to create the web of social relations. If the working class succeeds, then a new hegemony can be created through which the working class can take power in its hands. We already studied that hegemony is hand in hand with force. Force is in the hands of political society, hegemony is in the hands of civil society. But in order to wield power, in order to use force legitimately, you need hegemony. Now you have to take the hegemony in your own hands. Now you should go for the new hegemony. Now you have to own this hegemony through which you can wield power. Let me explain this with an example. The Congress party in India earlier had its own hegemony. It had its historical bloc. It had its association institutions like women's organizations, workers' organization like INTUC, students' organizations. So these institutions formed the hegemony for Congress. The Congress had its own ideals, which are the set of beliefs. Ideals were liberal democracy, secularism, the legacy of fighting the British, Gandhism, and so on. So this was the historical bloc of the Congress party. Okay, women's organization, a labor union, values, ideals. The Congress party was ruling very strong in India for many decades. Its first downfall came in the year 1977 when a new hegemony was created. Who created the new hegemony at the time? It was the Janata Party. Individuals like Ram Manohar Lohia, Charan Singh, and most of all J.P. Narayan. They were the organic intellectuals. In the philosophy of Gramsci, the organic intellectuals in the Janata Party would be these people. They now created their own institutions. They brought their own ideas. They simply reorganized the hegemony. If you look at the Janata Party wanted to bring new changes in India. It wanted self-reliance, which is a belief. It wanted rural industries, which is a belief. It wanted to develop agriculture and make agriculture self-reliant. These are beliefs. Now the organic intellectuals in Janata Party, they were opposing the heavy industrialization vision of Indira Gandhi and Nehru. They wanted to strengthen the small and medium scale enterprises. So institutions were also given importance. Am I correct? They made some changes in the foreign policy. They wanted to go for true non-alignment. At the same time, these people were against authoritarianism. They wanted to give importance to democracy. Earlier government of Indira Gandhi was seen as against democracy. They gave importance to labor reforms. Now a new hegemony was created under the leadership of the Janata Party. Got it? Now what is this? Reconstruction of hegemony, reorganization of the hegemony. But the hegemony of Janata Party did not last longer. It failed due to many internal contradictions. We need not discuss this in detail, but the hegemony was unable to sustain itself and the Janata Party ultimately lost. Then the Earlier hegemony, the Congress hegemony, was established again. Indira Gandhi came back to power. So you have to maintain the hegemony if you want to wield power. Only then you will obtain the legitimacy. People will recognize you. People will provide you the legitimacy to rule a state. Gramsci wants the working class to go for expansive hegemony, which means that the civil society should be as extended and expanded as possible compared to the political society. The reason is, this is where the ruling class obtains legitimacy. So he wants the working class to expand the civil society as much as possible. Right? If the prince was the agent of change for Machiavelli, the revolutionary party, the Communist Party of Italy, will be the agent of change for Gramsci. Now, ultimately, it is the workers who will play the role. The workers will be playing the role under the factory councils. The Communist Party will give the leadership. But unfortunately, Gramsci's vision did not come true. Italy was unable to undergo a socialist revolution following the vision of Gramsci. The fascists took over in Italy. Gramsci himself was jailed. Nevertheless, the vision of Gramsci gives us many new insights into politics and political science. You can study the political transformations throughout the world applying Antonio Gramsci's philosophy of neo-Marxism. You can also study the failure of many revolutions around the world using the philosophy of Gramsci and his concept of hegemony. Thank you.